Hello folks, and welcome to another wonderful grouping of Hobby Nightmares. It is winter now, so I'm starting my Hobby Nightmares not with some juice or a cold drink, or even a cocktail as I've done once or twice, but no, with a fine cup of tea of your finest Yorkshire tea. Well done. I do recommend Yorkshire, by the way. They are the best tea company in the UK. If you can get them elsewhere in the world, make sure you try and get them. So let me have a little sip just for posterity's sake. Gratitude. Right, let's get stuck in, shall we? Because the ones today are rather long, but also, I've been told, very interesting. I've only read one of these pre-recording, and they've been amended for me by my wonderful glamorous assistant. So, let's get in here. Firstly, with Tengu. And Tengu says, inviting a D&D player to live with me turns into a nightmare. I mean, I could have told you that, dude, before we even started, to be honest with you. He says, hello, Northern. Please don't say my name, because I don't want the person in my story to be identified. Well, yes, the name has been changed before I even got it, so that's good, because I would have raged if that was the first sentence of your, well, not the first, but the second sentence of your story. But no, we have changed your name before we even start, which is good. Also, I'm learning to write in English. Oh, good for you, man. So any critique to my writing is welcome. Okay, well, here's the thing, right? A lot of people say that. I may teach history and creative writing, but I can tell you how to make narratives, and I can tell you how to weave a story together, and how to, do a beginning, middle, and end, and how to, format characters and dialogue and stuff. But, like, I can't... I'm okay at vocab, but I'm not like a full-blown English teacher, man. So like, yeah, don't be thinking that. I know I have a go at people if they send stuff in and it's like nigh on illegible, like I can hardly read it, because it makes me sound silly when I'm reading it out. But yeah, like try and again, I get so many of these that if everybody sent stuff through, which is why people say, why'd you have a go at people? Well, if everyone sent stuff through that was like not able to be read, and I had to format every single one, I would do one video a week, right? It's not doable, so But no, you don't need my advice. Just practice, man. You're doing pretty well from what I can see. Today, I'll share a story about the time I met a complete stranger who then invited me to play D&D with his friends, who then I invited to live with me. Yeah, there's several things wrong with that sentence, Tengu, and yeah. We'll get into that later. The chance meeting. This was a few years ago, before Nurgle's plague. I was 23 and an immigrant at the time in the USA. Ah, fellow immigrant, hello. I'd been there for a few years, but as an immigrant and a neurodivergent person, I was honestly having a really hard time paying bills and living on my own. Oh man, yeah, I feel that. I was bartending at the time. Wow, that is a stressful job for a neurodivergent person. I was bartending at the time, and a female co-worker needed a place to live. Since the other immigrants I was living with just left me alone with the bills to go back to their countries, I had an unoccupied spare room in the apartment I was renting. So, I invited her and her girlfriend to live with me so we could split the rent. Okay. And good on them for doing that. I'm not thinking you're a weirdo, by the way. Sometimes you're just trying to do somebody a favour. One night, late night, after work, I was waiting at the bus stop when a tall dude approached me asking for directions. Let's call him Joe. And he looked very similar to myself. He could have been my brother. We both had long blonde hair and blue eyes, and we were both obviously metal fans. I could tell by our metal band t-shirts, not stereotypical neckbeard mind you. He asked me for some directions, and I noticed he had an accent. So I asked where he was from, and it turns out he was from another country where they speak the same language as in mine, Spanish. And he was also an immigrant. Okay. So we started talking in Spanish, and we instantly bonded. It was clear we had a lot in common, and since he was 19 years old, the same age as I was when I migrated, I related to his struggles a lot, and actually felt like a big brother in a way. We exchanged Facebook profiles, and I got on my bus when it arrived. In the following months, we chatted a bit now and then, exchanged some knowledge about metal bands, and I gave him some advice in finding jobs, etc. Well, this is cool. This is all wholesome so far. You're going to ruin it, aren't you? You're going to ruin it. This is going to be a car crash. Okay, the hobby. One day, do you know what? Why did you say that you're learning English, dude? This is great. Little things missing here and there, but this is brilliant. The hobby. One day, Joe told me and his friends, he and his friends were going to start a D&D campaign in a few weeks, and they needed an extra player. I had never played D&D at the time, but he told me not to worry, just to commit to prepare my character sheet using a website they provided, and to be there on the day we all agreed to play. The next part was actually pretty wholesome. We met for the campaign with his other metalhead American friends at one of their houses. Joe was living with one of them at the time. And the DM and everyone else did a great job of helping me with the rules, and I had a blast. The campaign had some very silly moments where we all rolled to perform really absurd feats and got 20s and 19s all the way. The DM couldn't believe that we pulled it all off every time. And between our awesome rolls and a ton of creativity, we broke nearly every scenario, but the DM just rolled with it, laughing and celebrating with us. Okay, this is cool. We really had a great time, and I'm very thankful for that introduction to D&D and that it was so rad. People have told me that I come off as a very kind, social and secure person, but I actually struggle a lot socially, so I was grateful to have met such great and fun people. Awesome. This is getting more and more wholesome. How could things go wrong? Well, the nightmare. A couple of months after that experience, we had kept in touch, and I don't recall the exact details, but one day he told me he no longer had a place to stay at. Well, details, mate. That's the big mistake there. Details. You want details when somebody says something like that, and you don't know them that well. Now, I'd honestly struggled a lot before I rented that apartment. Not to go into details, but I broke up with my fiancée, who had migrated with me, spent some nights literally in the streets, sleeping under a bridge, oh wow, and feeling like the world was against me. I even considered offing myself daily for a while. I even tried it, but thankfully I failed in that too, and I'm very glad I did. Good. Well, I'm glad you're still around, man. I mean, that sounds like a really, really harrowing situation to be in. So when he told me he had no job and no place to stay, my newfound big brother instincts kicked in. Yeah, he knew you were doing that, dude. I'm telling you now, he knew you would have that response. And I wanted to spare Joe the horrors I had gone through. So I told him, Joe, come live in my couch. There's the English thing coming out, the non-English speaking thing. Joe, come live in my couch. Okay, Joe, come live on my couch, and I'll pay for your split of the rent until you find a job. I talked to my female tenants about it to see if they were okay with it, told them I would split their half of the rent between them, and Joe for the inconvenience. Not equally, since they would have a room and Joe would have the couch, but they would have to share the bathroom, so I felt it was fair. Since women really appreciate their intimacy and hygiene, and they were a couple. Awesome, okay. And they gladly agreed. At first. Well, to be fair, I think you're being more than fair there. It's your apartment. So if you say, my friend's staying here on the couch, I'll give you, like... I'm letting him stay for free, but I'll give you, like a $50 a week pass on your rent. That's more than enough, dude. You don't need to split their entire rent bill with them. Joe moved in, and he eventually got a job. So he was paying his part. I spent most of my time at my job, and rarely saw any of them at all. My female co-worker had changed jobs by then, and for a time, it was good. One day, though, my female friend and her girlfriend approached me when we were alone, and they seemed pretty desperate. They told me that Joe was a mess. He always clogged the drain with his long hair, and he left it everywhere else. He left things out of place, and always left the restroom all dirty and stinky. I had a restroom inside my room and never used theirs, so I was oblivious to all of this. But it was clear that they had been having this problem for a while and just couldn't deal with it anymore. I told them I had no idea this was a problem, and that I would have to have a talk about Joe as soon as he came home, which I did. Okay. Joe assured me he would be more careful with his hygiene, and I thought that was the end of it. But it was not. A couple of weeks after that, my female co-workers approached me again, told me nothing had changed. I talked to Joe, and he assured me once more it wouldn't happen again, but it did, over and over again, until the girls couldn't bear it anymore, and I decided it was time to give Joe some tough love. This was very hard for me, because I don't like confrontation, so I just told him the truth in the nicest way possible. I said, look man, this has become a real problem, and you really need to do something about it, or I will. Well, that's pretty hard-nosed, I mean, you know. But Joe, as always, just apologised and said yes to everything. It was horrible for me. I felt like nothing I said was actually entering his head. And since nothing changed, I was forced to sort of kick him out eventually. Well, not sort of, man. He's been given more than enough chances. Not sort of. One thing I would say is you could have saved a lot of trouble here. Not saved a lot of trouble, but saved yourself some real heartache. If you'd have asked the girls, look, next time this happens, bring me into the bathroom and show me. I'm telling you this now, right? Two blokes living together, I've done this before, right? Blokes living together, your bathroom will be clean, quote unquote, right? Your bathroom will be clean, your room will be clean, your kitchen will be clean. But then you will have your girlfriend round, and she will tell you it is not clean. Because some women's standards of cleanliness is much above that of a man. For me, if things are in the right place and everything's not got dirt on it, or grime or anything, you know, and it's been disinfected, it's clean. Well, not for certain women. Like, certain women will go in there and be like, well, this is out of place, that's out of place, that's out of place. So you never know what they mean when they're coming in and they're saying, this is not right, this is not right. It would have been better for you to go in there and see it for yourself. And if they are not being truthful, because it is truth to them, but if they are legitimately concerned about this stuff, then yeah, you can say, look, okay, this is ridiculous. I'll need to go and have a word with him. Or, you know, but if you're going in there and like the plug hole's clogged or something, and they're like squeeing about it, then you need to have a word with both of them and knock their heads together and say, look, you got a good deal on the rent, and you're a little dirty bugger. So, you know, knock your heads together, sort it out. So yeah, I think that's the only thing you've done wrong here, is that you haven't seen the evidence for yourself. You haven't really gone in there and partook in it. You took their word for it, which is fair enough. But at the same time, just be careful, because, yeah, not everyone's standard of cleanliness is the same, right? I fully admit, like, when I first moved out of home, I was a dirty little bastard, because I was just a guy, you know? And it took me living with a girlfriend to, like, straighten me out and mentally beat me into shape of, like, having a nicely adjudicated and cleaned place. So now if a woman comes into my place and is like, this is dirty, I know it isn't. You know what I mean? I know it isn't. Like, if she comes in and she's like, she thinks it's all in the wrong place. That's why it's dirty. They seem to correlate the two things. Not how I want it means it's dirty. No. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, you need to have gone in there and done a bit yourself. But apart from that, you're good. You're fine. Thankfully, he says, he kind of left on his own because he found somewhere else to go. But it was too late. My female tenants found somewhere else to move to as well, and they did. To this day, I still feel very bad, because they were all friends of mine, and I felt like I had failed them in a way. I failed to give my female friends a nice experience in our last months together, and I failed at having Joe as a big brother, or being Joe's big brother, since I didn't manage to make him understand the problem. I grew up in an only female matriarchy, so things like keeping my hair out of the drain and keeping my personal hygiene and the restroom organised came pretty natural to me. But I never had a father or big brother of my own. So I don't know how to explain these things to someone else. Oh, there we go, see? I'm 28 now, and to this day, I wish I could have kept things together somehow. I know there are two sides to every story, and I probably did some crappy stuff too. I haven't talked to Joe in years, but besides the restroom thing, he was a great friend to me, and I wish things hadn't gone that way. But anyway, please stay clean, nerds. There really isn't an easy way for me to say that, but some people really need to hear it for their own sakes. Yeah, okay, yeah, cool, thank you. And, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Just, you know, I would have needed to have seen the evidence for myself, because I know for a fact that I've had ex-girlfriends who I've had to, like, give a talking to. Like when I was living with a guy, when I was when I was running my games workshop, I was living with a guy, and really nice guy, and I had a girlfriend who would come round to the house, the flat that we were staying in, and she would moan about the way he left the bathroom and shit like that, but I would go in and it would be completely fine. So you have to be extremely careful about who you're shoving out and who you're keeping. It seems to me there that the girls wanted to leave anyway, and I'm getting a distinct impression that they were leaving anyway, because once the problem's sorted, they've got a good rent thing going on, they could have just stayed there, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, man. I need to know more about the situation for a comment, but it did seem pretty fishy to me that they were very, shall we say, well, that they left anyway. But anyway, BWP says, Hey Northern, please don't use my real name as I don't want to be identified, buddy. Tom Motchley. Yeah, we haven't done, so there you go. BWP is now your name. I used to be a GW retail muppet in the before time. I thought you said before my bedtime. I was like, what? I used to be a Games Workshop retail muppet in the before time. In the long ago times when regions had the 4 hours, pronounced whores, of the apocalypse. When each region had a chaplain and inquisitor. When Ronnie Renton took command of the retail side. I am that old. Okay, cool. So yeah, I never knew Renton. I never knew anyone from that well, I knew 1 or 2 people from that generation. My manager was one of the people from that generation. My tale begins in 1999, when Games Workshop changed figure cases. My hairy, grimy, and perpetually slimy manager got one of the new cases to show and build up pre-orders. We were targeted to pre-order X amount, I can't recall the number. Agent Beer has got me forgetting that. Well said. Okay, right, okay, so here we go with the comedy stuff. It's hard to follow letters when every single start of when every sentence starts with like a comedy new name for the person who's the subject of the video. So I'm gonna try, but like this is going above and beyond. Well said, Jimmy Cranky fanboy of manager left his case in the store with explicit instructions to show it to all and sundry. Impress upon people how much better it was. Okay, so the manager in this story is got loads of pre-orders in his case and he's showing it off to people, making sure his staff shows it off to people. One day, Sparky, another unfortunate soul who sold out his soul to Games Workshop for lead, was in the store when a mum and her bespectacled son wanted to buy a case. Fear not, madame, I exclaimed, for we have this new case. See how much better it looks. See how much sturdier it is. Our helpless manager had a proclivity for adult educational material, unheard of in those days, but in the age of the internet would seem a bit tame. But to young me, it was explicit. Okay, so adult educational material means porn. Okay, can we just say that? Because like there are people who will be listening to this being like, what is he talking about? He always liked to spank the monkey. Okay, he liked to choke the chicken. Okay, here we go, right? Pray to the bishop during work hours. Okay, brilliant. Dude, can we just say he wanked off during work hours? You know? Like, I deal with this, like, when I'm teaching, like, over verbose writing, it just sets me off. I'm just like, get rid of all these adjectives, we don't need them. And I'm just, like, scribbling through everything. Yeah, so, pray to the bishop during work hours. Basically, the manager is wanking off to porn during his work hours. Okay, cool. And he kept such material close at hand. Okay. In his figure case, to be exact. Alright, yeah, post-redeemed. Post-redeemed. Yes, that figure case. The one I had just opened to this mother and her young son. The first magazine was adorned with a MILF, the next a schoolgirl, and I couldn't bear to look at the mother. She had both eyes full of this filth. Sparky, my faithful compatriot, well, he couldn't hold back the laughter. The son looked very amused. The mum screamed, "Whose case is that?" Shocked and horrified that a banshee had suddenly appeared, I meekly said, the manager, and he's back tomorrow. I winced as her finger drew level with my face, and she told me she's calling him, and she fled the store. Well, let's just say I was sick the next day, and got to miss what was, by account, a gloriously loud call from a very angry mother. Cheers, Northern. Hope you enjoy this true tale. And if you have any proof of my GW time, I can send photos. Much love, BWP. No, you're all good, man. That really redeemed it there. That really did redeem it. Like, it was just full of adjectives and nonsense, and then there we go. Brings it all back together. Love it. Thank you. I just, like, you're just like, I have this case here. Have a look inside. Ta-da! Just, and it's just like Debbie Does Dallas all on the inside of it. You're like, oh, shit. Oh. Whoops. Bones McGraw says, G'day, North. I go by Bonesaw McGraw on the Discord, and you can refer to me here as Bonesaw. Love your work. Okay, yep, we have done. And thank you. I've only been in the hobby 3 years and haven't done much playing in the wilderness of Brisbane's game stores, so I'm fresh out of neckbeard encounters, hissy fits and what have you. Well, that's alright, man. I'm pretty glad that you're, having a nice time of it. I only have one small horror story. Then some mushy but important stuff regarding something you mentioned in a video that I think really needed highlighting. Okay. My horror story can be summed up in a single sentence. Corn on a small board. As in corn the god, not corn as in the corn on the cob. My then housemates and I all got into 40k at the start of the pandemic. Myself collecting an all-metal Rogue Trader era Eldar force. It was actually cheaper to get collectible old models than paid Games Workshop's Aussie prices. Yeah, no shit. And Firstborn only Deathwatch. One housemate started collecting Guard, the other, we'll call him Sven, got a Khorne demon army together, as well as some World Eaters. Now, none of us are rich, and we are very slow painters, so we were working our way up to 1500 points, which means a lot of 500, 1000 point games. Even though we moved from that beautiful, filthy storehouse when I found my partner was pregnant, we all still have a fortnightly game. And Sven, with his Angry Boys, is sitting on 22 wins and 0 losses. Oh, Jesus. How, might you ask? Well, not only is he ex-army and a rather sound tactician, but there really seems to be no answer to deep-striking bloodletters. My elves, Deathwatch, and my other mate's Guard are simply torn to shreds each game. We're not salty about it, but good lord, it is a challenge to overcome. Now for the mushy stuff. My daughter is now a little over a year old, and my partner is relatively young for motherhood in this day and age, 25, and I'm nearly 28. Good lad. Good lad, bagged a young'un. In a previous video, don't take that out of context, she's 25 by the way, I know a few of you. No, shut up. Get in the sea. In a previous video, when a story came in about a guy whose mate was dying while guy number 1 was starting a family, really stuck home with me. And as you said, when you're a man, you need to be that rock for everybody around you. This is true. A man needs to be solid, but that's quite the challenge sometimes. Yeah, man. Yeah, it is. And don't forget what else I said in that as well. Like, you need to take time for yourself. It's okay to, with that thing, it's okay to not be okay. Yeah, it's fine. Like, you need to be the man about this shit. Yeah, you need to be the one who's there holding everybody together. But you need to find ways to vent and get it out and look after yourself as well. Because if you're not there, everyone else is going to suffer, Leader of the pack and all that. Whether it be a family of your own, a circle of friends, your siblings or parents, whomever, a good man needs to be solid for those around them. And sometimes that's pretty hard. Remember, lads, asking for help is important. If you're having a hard time being that rock, always ask for help before throwing up your hands. A good partner will be there for you when you really need them. And if you don't have one, you can reach out to your family, or mates, or even the Northern Exile Discord. Good lad, thank you for the free plug. Anyway, that's my mushy stuff over. We're all gonna make it, bros. Okay. He says, okay, I've got to get a quick gloat in. The missus, who is supportive of my hobby but not interested in it, got me a Knight Questoris for getting through my first year of uni, secondary education and media. Good lad. All you youngins who want a nerdy girl, that's not what you really need. You just need a supportive girl. Cheers, Noah. Thanks for all the solid content. Yeah, I mean, your friend there sounds like a pretty decent guy. He just seems like a guy with a quite a meta list. Or not meta, but quite powerful list. And you're all just collecting bits and bobs. I've been in that situation before. I've been the Sven guy in this, who's been, like, kicking ass, but, like, you start not enjoying games that much because you're just winning every single week because you're playing the same people. So, I would say to you guys, either buy stuff or get models or get lists that are going to, like, actually give him the time of day on the tabletop, or have a little word with him. If you say, look, man, it's getting a bit silly now. You're winning every single time, which is great, but, like, we can't run tournaments and we can't run campaigns because you'll win every single one of them. So, we can't go into the more in-depth part of the hobby. We can't go into that deeper water, because you've got these rubber armbands on, so we can't go swimming deeper water, Anyway, that's what I would say. Mike says, good evening, North, and I have exchanged emails with Mike. He wanted me to change his name, and so I have done. I hope this message finds you in good health and spirits. I recently stumbled across your channel, and I've been binging your Hobby Nightmares videos during my commute to and from work. I think social media tends to create opinions that lead from one extreme to the other, so the nuance and varied perspectives you bring to your stories is quite refreshing. Yeah, I mean, I'm finding that even on YouTube, I do get the odd person who's just never happy. Like, it doesn't matter what opinion you have, they're just never happy. I've had the same person, right, argue with me on 2 different points of the same issue on different videos. That's happened more than once. So I think when you're on social media, 1, don't be on social media, and 2, take everything you see there with a pinch of salt. When I say a pinch, I mean like a whole grinder of salt, because a lot of the people there aren't saying what they're truly feeling. They're not saying what they're truly going through. And this is why I value this channel quite a lot, because I get to do this in a very raw way, where I get to tell you what I'm feeling, and it's me talking to you, like 2 blokes at a bar, or a bloke and a woman, or whatever, at a bar, just having a chinwag, you know? Very one-sided conversation, but a conversation nonetheless. But thank you very much, Mike. Cheers, mate. For some background, I am a 23-year-old man living in a town called Trafalgar, just 30 minutes south of Indianapolis, Indiana. Yeah, now you know why we changed his name. Although I'm lucky enough to have a thriving local 40k community, most of my games tend to be played at home with close friends. My ex-roommate's friend, Wyatt, introduced me to 40k when I was 20, and I immediately fell in love with the setting and the hobby. I grew up playing games like Risk, Axis and Allies, and Memoir 44 with my dad. That seems like a cool dad. So Warhammer seemed like the perfect stepping stone into wargaming. I bought the Craftworld Start Collecting box set, and my addiction to plastic crack officially began. I had quite a pleasant start to the hobby. Wyatt and I would go down to our friendly local game store to play 40k on Wednesday evenings. A majority of the regulars were pleasant enough, and were more than happy to teach us the ropes of 8th edition. We didn't want Bryce, my roommate, to feel left out, but he didn't show any real interest in playing. We started to feel guilty because prior to getting into Warhammer, the 3 of us would play Magic the Gathering at my apartment every evening. After some time, we offered to buy him a box of models if he tried Kill Team with us, and he agreed. We bought him a box of Skitarii Rangers, and Wyatt even painted them for him. Eventually, we had 2 others join our nightly group, my little brother, Jackson, and our friend, Tim, and would tend to play 1v1 or 2v2 or free-for-all matches of Kill Team in my apartment. And although Bryce was a bit of a bad sport, blaming his losses on dice or his opponent's army being too good, we were able to ignore his bitching and continue to enjoy ourselves. Things changed when I moved out of the apartment into my new house. Let me just take a little sip of tea here, because I'm feeling a tickle at the back of my throat. That's better. Yorkshire. Always hits the spot. There was much more room to play, so we moved on to play 40 games of 40k instead. I personally wasn't a fan of large games than 2 players, but everyone else wanted to play large games involving the entire group, so that's what we typically did. The game ran for hours, and we were usually fairly unbalanced. This brought out our worst side of Bryce, and things got toxic rather quickly. He would complain that everybody would always focus on him, even if we didn't. He, hands down, had the strongest army on the table, but would complain that his army was the most underpowered of the group. He would usually be in a mood for a day or 2 after our weekly game, and after a while, he just wasn't fun to live with anymore. He would complain so much that in an effort to appease him, I picked up Necrons, then Death Guard, and then Drakari, but no matter what I played, he would always find something to complain about. Okay, we're getting into the method of appeasement here. Appeasement doesn't work with man-children. It just doesn't work. The main thing you need to do is to take a big step back and say, look, your behaviour's not great. Yeah, people are going to stop playing with you if you carry on this way. You have one of the strongest armies here. We're here to have a good time. Can you not just have a good time? And by the way, if somebody in your group is not enjoying a set, a game that you're playing together, right? And he's a good friend of yours, then stop playing that game. Like, what I mean by that is, I don't mean like stop your D&D session or anything like that before anyone starts whinging. I mean, like, if you're all playing a free-for-all 40k game, which are terrible, by the way. It's a terrible way to play the game, free-for-all 40k between 5 or 6 people. Because you're standing around for ages, and it just breeds nastiness and horribleness and anger, you know, and frustration. If you're all playing a free-for-all 40k game, then stop doing that. Say, look, why don't we all just play 1v1s and do like in a tournament style, do a campaign where it's all 1v1s? You know, a campaign's even better, because even if you lose, you can kind of win if you cap certain objectives. It'd be such a good way of mitigating shit like this. And beyond all this, you should also have a talk to Bryce about the appropriate behaviour when you're doing the hobby. That's it. Those are just the things that could have solved this entire situation. But anyway, let's carry on. Wyatt, Jackson and I already played fluffy lists, whilst Bryce and Tim were real power gamers. Example, my Cabal of the Flayed Skull list was based fully around models with fly and 2 units of Calabite warriors in transports. Yeah, it's pretty shreddable with like normal bolter fire. Here is where things start to tie together. For the 3 years we had lived together, I was suffering from gradually worsening depression and anxiety. Ah, shit, man, I'm sorry to hear that. I left the house less and less, and gained an absurd amount of weight in a short period of time. I went from £150 to £315 in less than 2 years. Jesus, that's not good, man. As I recently learned, I had undiagnosed PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I am in the military, but my disorder is not combat related. I was trapped in an abusive situation with my command sergeant major, but this is a different story for a different time. And for those out there scoffing at this, yes, men can be abused too. Yeah, I know my own community, and I don't know any of them who would scoff at this. And if you would, then, you know, go fuck yourself, get in the sea. I was scared of being discharged and ruining my career, so I avoided reporting how I felt and did not seek help for my condition. I coped with my anxiety with food and with my hobby. The issue is, once things with Bryce started to go sour, I no longer got any enjoyment or comfort from the hobby. I played and painted less and less until I quit the hobby altogether. It was too stressful. I replaced it with my bed, and my condition only worsened. I felt so miserable, I even volunteered for a deployment to get out of the situation. Wow. Wow. If you think armed combat, I mean, this is what I mean, right? Young people say, well, it maybe it's just a bit sad. If you would prefer armed combat in a war zone to the situation you're in, you're fucked. Just fucked. Like that. There's no other way to say that, right? If you thought things were bad, just wait, it gets worse. Earlier this year, things became too much for me. We were in the field on a training exercise, and out of the blue, something inside me snapped. I started sobbing uncontrollably for what amounted to about 2 or 3 hours. Thankfully, my medical NCO took me to his office, so most of my unit didn't see my breakdown. He asked me if I was suicidal, and I said I had been for years now. He took me to the emergency room, and I waited for 6 hours to be seen. When they finally did, all they did was check my vitals and ask, "Are you planning to harm anyone?" After replying no, they discharged me and sent me home. Yeah, it sounds like the military. I took leave for the rest of the week and stayed over at my parents' house until I felt ready to head home. Jesus. When I got home, there was a bill in the mail for $3,000 for the ER visit, after insurance, because I'm a federal employee, in addition to being in the National Guard, and was required to waive my right to healthcare through the military. The logic is employment is enough of a benefit. Wow, federal technicians have been lobbying against this for years now to no avail. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. Fuck that. Oh, that makes me angry. That really makes me angry. So, it makes me angry because as an immigrant who is moving there to teach, I had better coverage than you. Because I was covered for everything. Like, for $30 a month, I was covered for everything. Anything that happened to me, I was covered. You know, I'd end up paying like a couple of $100 for it. Like, that's how it worked out when we looked at the printout. You know, we went with a good company, a good insurance company in the US, but it was still like $30 a month, and then it was like everything's covered. And the only thing that wasn't covered was something ridiculous. It was like, you know, like a shark or something. We were having a laugh about it. When I remember with my father-in-law at the time, we were having a laugh about what I wasn't covered by. So I had to like stay away from certain things. It's just quite funny. But anyway, for context, he says, I had already been living check to check for quite some time. I thought Bryce was making substantially less money than me, so I only charged him $300 a month for rent, under the condition that he helped with chores, which he never did. I was in danger of having my utilities shut off and my car impounded, but my family was very generous, and they loaned me what I needed until I could pay them back. I hate asking for things, but I was in a really bad place financially. Yeah, I mean, dude, when you're in this situation, like, this is how easy things can become unraveled. When you're in this situation, this is not your fault. This is not your fault. Categorically. If you needed to hear that, then I'm telling you, this is not your fault. And that's what families are for. Like, families are not there to be used. Absolutely not. They're not there to be used. But in situations like this that are not your fault, this is exactly what families are for. Right? Give you that helping hand to get you out of trouble. He says, I felt extremely embarrassed. That's understandable, but not needed. But I sat Bryce down and asked him if I could raise his rent. I told him I knew he was in a bad financial position as well, but if he could spare an extra $50 a month, it would mean the world to me. I explained the situation, but he told me that he couldn't afford it, so I left it at that. I started to sell off some of my models and my belongings to make sure bills were paid, and did my best to keep my head above water. Okay, here's where everything ties together. I'm going to get angry here, aren't I? I can feel it. I can feel it in me cockles. Cockles means guts to people who are not from the UK before you start giggling. Here it is where it all ties together. Jackson got a job offer to work for the railroad in Wyoming, and the idea of working with him excited me for the first time since my emotional breakdown. I gave Bryce a 2-month notice that he would need to find a place to live, so I could try and seize the opportunity to live a better life. He seemed very pissy, but didn't say anything. As a month passed, I grew more and more concerned. He was making no effort to look for a place to live, and began to spend obscene amounts of money. He bought an AdMech Battle Force box, spent over $2,000 on paintball equipment. He had gone paintballing with Wyatt once prior to that in the past year, and a variety of other non-essentials. I began to grow very concerned, and so our group organised an intervention for him. I told him that we were worried about him finding a place to live, and if he needed help, we were there for him. He told us that he couldn't afford it. And that he had less than $50 in his bank account. I knew he was irresponsible with money, but I thought he made $12 an hour, so I understood why he didn't have much money. I had chalked his more recent purchases up to savings he was sitting on, but still mentally judged him for not using that money to move. Come to find out, he was making $28 an hour, which was $8 an hour more than I was making, on top of his volunteer position, quote-unquote, at church, apparently paying $12 an hour when he was there. Safe to say, I was livid. I could care less if I don't bring home as much money as my friends, but I felt lied to and desperately taken advantage of. He'd been spending upwards of $1,600 a month eating out, on top of the payment of his new car, etc., etc. I told him he had 4 days to pack his things and move out, which of course he said wasn't enough notice. Fuck this guy, dude. Absolutely. Human cancer. Human cancer. The timing was very important. I needed professional pictures taken of the house in order to list it, and I was moving to Wyoming the following week. Beautiful place, by the way, Wyoming. He did not come home that week, and I had to delay my house listing. I am very sensitive about my personal space, so I make an effort to respect the personal space of others. Cue yet another naive mistake that I made. I received a 3-paragraph long text from my real estate agent while I was at work. She was very happy about how clean the house was, except for Bryce's room. There was a red mould growing from it in his bathroom. His bedroom was covered in dirty laundry, piles of empty McDonald's cups, piss stains, pubic hairs, etc., etc. Yeah. This is getting to be a hard read. She said it looked like his bedding had never been washed. Safe to say, I was quite livid. I left work early and drove straight home. I packed and moved his entire room. You packed and moved his entire room? Dude, I would have set fire to his entire fucking room. Did you just put all of his belongings in the front garden, put them in a bonfire? Say, listen, they were contaminated. We need to get rid of them. What a douche. What an absolute douche. I packed and moved his entire room into the living room by myself, including his heavy oak furniture, piss-stained mattress, and AdMech army. Just when I was finished up, he walked in the front door and said, "What the fuck do you think you're doing?" We had a 2-hour-long argument, a majority of which was him yelling and attempting to gaslight me. But I had finally had enough of his shit. I stayed calm, told him how I felt, and that if things were not out of the house by the weekend, they would be on the curb for the trash pickup. Good lad. After he'd left, I just cried it out of my system, and called each of my friends to let them know what had happened, and that I wanted to see everybody before I left, but that I would not be inviting him. I had to hire a professional cleaner to deep clean his room. The concrete underneath the floor was stained, for fuck's sake. Oh my god. Re-grout the shower and replace the carpet in his room. He ended up taking some of my Nintendo Switch games when he left, and had the balls to ask if he could have any of my models or alcohol. I am a contract bartender on the side, so I have about 50 bottles of expensive liquor in the house. Oh, did I also mention that prior to the intervention, he tried to guilt me for putting a friend in a bad spot and asked me for about $10,000 in compensation so we could find a place to live? What the hell, dude? I'm starting to lose my shit. No joke, he hadn't even paid me that much in 3 years we lived together. He refused to pay his last month rent and utilities, so I'm out quite a bit because of him. Dude, my god, it's always worse when the people you already know. Do you know what I mean? It's always worse when the people you already know. Fuck this guy. Honestly. Honestly. I know this story has been long, but we're finally at the end now. I drove all my way out to Wyoming, only for him to rescind my job offer after finding out I have insomnia. I'd been operating heavy equipment and trains for long hours, so I understand why that was a deal breaker. I just wish I'd been told sooner. And my brother ended up quitting because he didn't enjoy the work anyway. I am very lucky that I hadn't listed my house or officially resigned my position at that point, so things are starting to get back to normal. Jackson is actually moving in, which I'm very excited for. He's basically my best friend, and we always spend lots of time together. Our friend group is much less toxic now Bryce is gone, and I'm officially back in the hobby. I painted up commandos for a kill team campaign I'll be hosting, and I'm currently painting my Death Guard army up to display standard. I'd be happy to send a picture, yes please do, of my hobby progress if you're interested in seeing them. I've lost 40 pounds since April. I had COVID in July and lost 1/3 of my strength on most lifts. But your videos inspired me to get back into the gym yesterday. I'd like to lose 120 more pounds next year and get back to my comfort weight. I'd like to thank you again for reading the story and understand if it's too long to make it into a video. No, it wasn't. I'd also like to thank you for inspiring me to better myself and not to use my mental health as an excuse to give up life. Love you long time, Mike. Yeah, so you know what, man? That's what Bryce did. He exactly uses mental health as an excuse to give up and start taking advantage of the people around him. You know, putting a friend in a bad spot, I'm in a bad way, boo-hoo-hoo, right? That's exactly the kind of shit that, you know, a manipulator does. You've done very, very, very well. And I have had a follow-up email from Mike telling me that he's had therapy and he's doing really well. So great stuff, brilliant. Thank you for sending me that. I'll try and email you back later on today or tomorrow, whenever I can get some time away from the kid and away from cooking and stuff. But thank you, man. Excellent video and excellent video. Self-compliment there. No, excellent story. Cheers, my friend, and hopefully you're getting along better with life. That was a heavy one, but sometimes we need a heavy one just to balance out all of the goo and niceness that we have on the channel. If you like what I do, please subscribe. The button is down below, and if you like what I do even more, the Patreon button is also down below. I love you a long time. Please have a wonderful day, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, so I'll be speaking to you on a live stream, perhaps. I'm thinking about doing a live stream. And then on Friday, we have an extra special video. But I'm going to save that and that announcement until the live stream tomorrow. So if you're on the live stream, tomorrow, I'll announce what it is tomorrow. Anyway, see you later. Have a good one. Love you a long time. Be safe. Goodbye.